something outside of you loving you. So mom, when you're in mom's womb, she's building that love for you, with you over that 9 months. And you're in that energy and you don't know that that energy is not you. And when you're born and she holds you for the first time, you feel that same familiarity. So mom is the self, and that's what she models for you. But then the very first time that dad holds you, and he's oozing with love, and it's really become real for him in that moment, like, wow, I created this is real. uh there's this feeling of love, but but it feels different. Dad's energy is different than mom's.
Right.
And in that moment, you experience for the very first time something outside of you loving you.
And welcome to the Building Men podcast. Become the strongest version of yourself mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. What's going on, brother?
Nothing, man. I feel good. I'm trying to be aware of my voice right now. I really want to make it sound like I'm a podcaster. I feel like we were talking about that before. Do you notice the going down a little bit there?
Yeah,
you like that?
A couple decibels.
Yeah, it's gonna go up in a little bit, but I thought I'd just start out that way because all of a sudden I'm gonna get excited in what I'm saying. It's gonna rise up. But yeah, I feel good. How you doing? You
I'm
feel
great. This is gonna be the episode that goes viral. We did a little pre-talk beforehand. This is the big one. This is the big
manifest
episode,
that
so
shit.
We're manifesting.
It's already
right
done.
Now it's done. We're just catching up with it.
Yep.
And we just came off an interview with Chris Marhefka.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, that was a journey as well. I can't wait to talk to our guest today about him, because we were awestruck, right? We were just really, he's a beautiful man. He
is
really
a beautiful
is.
man.
I couldn't get over it.
I guess him in person, I didn't realize.
You didn't know I was going to go down that route either?
No, I didn't. I thought we would talk about something else because we have a different guest on, but you still want to spend time talking about Chris's. Dennis has a massive man crush. Just a crush in general. I wouldn't even call it a man. I think you just love him. Yeah, so
I'll use that to segue into Chris's partner in crime in Training Camp for the Soul is our guest today. So not only is she the founder of Training Camp for the Soul, she's also a coach and a spiritual guide, and the second female guest in the history of the long storied Building Men podcast. Please welcome to the podcast, Anat Peri. Anat, welcome. So good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on here. It's such a pleasure.
Oh, our pleasure. Totally our pleasure. The lighting behind you looks perfect.
It's amazing. The plants, I sense the energy.
Yeah, there's a whole feng shui thing going on. Is that the right way to say it?
You're asking me. I ask you about all the shit. Are you kidding me?
Right. I'm supposed
to. Guys, that's what's missing for you. There's a little bit of greenery.
Yeah,
that's it. You just need a plant behind you for that white wall.
Oh, it's too much white.
Are you writing this down? We look like we're in an insane asylum or something like that. Like there's padded walls. Yeah. We need some color. We're both wearing black.
Right. We feel like that too sometimes.
Oh. Yeah, that's all you need. Home Depot. Home Depot Gardens, and you're good to go.
All right,
let's put that on the list.
Get a ficus.
Succulent. We can get a succulent.
It doesn't have to be real.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, that's true. These happen to be real, but you can get some that are, don't take much.
Yeah, and there's a whole vibe, there's a whole energy, and we definitely feel that in our, we talked for a couple minutes beforehand, and like I mentioned, we had Chris on the podcast, and as soon as it started, I was like, wow, this is a good-looking man. And I was like, I gotta ask Anat. I mean, is he that good-looking in person, or was it all smoke and mirrors on the?
Was it the lighting?
Was it the lighting? Was it the lack of greenery in the?
He is, but he wasn't that good looking when I met him 2.5 years ago.
It's a journey he went on.
It's a journey. It's the more he's stepped into his essence, like his truest, highest self. He beams that. He totally beams that. But if if you scroll in his Instagram, I think he deleted a lot of them, but I think I have some.
Yeah, we
Also,
gotta
if
post
you
those.
scroll all the way back, like 3 years ago, or just look, you'll see the difference. You'll feel the difference
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, he had like the
So,
short haircut. He was clean shaven. He was living this life that he thought we went on this whole dive of living an authentic life, the life that people prescribe for you and not what you truly believe in. And I feel like he kind of shed that shit along the way and became who he wanted to
mhm.
become. And a lot of that was based on your tutelage, your inspiration, your help,
My guidance.
your
He did the
guidance.
work,
He did the
but
work.
definitely his uh his willingness to do the work. Yeah.
And before we get into that work that you're doing, I wanted to start off. You were an East Coast girl. You grew up,
Hmm.
on the East Coast. We're Jersey boys, and you grew up in northern New Jersey.
Yeah, Jersey in the
Yep.
house.
Yeah, it's
I mean, I now live on the West Coast, which, sorry to say, is the best coast. But I really appreciate growing up in New Jersey. I think it set me up. It set me up to have that fire in me and that courage in me and that leadership in me. And I know what good food is.
yeah.
Just, I know what a good bagel is. I had a bagel this
Oh,
morning with my girlfriend, and I'm like, this is good, but not like East Coast, not like New York, New Jersey.
for
Yeah.
real.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
bagels, pizza, definitely
yep,
those
Yeah.
bagel and pizza.
without a doubt.
Exactly.
And then what about pork roll? Do you get any? Is there pork roll out there? I know like Jersey is known for its pork roll.
Chinese food, no. Like I was just thinking, what are the three things that I miss, or if I were to go spend a week in New Jersey, it'd be like bagels, pizza, and Chinese food. So
Yeah.
Chinese food you don't really get here.
No, it's
I
not.
maybe if I go to like LA or San Francisco to like Chinatown and those areas, but definitely not San Diego. I think I only know of like maybe two or three. More Thai food. So, which is
Yeah.
not something I ever had on the East Coast. I don't know that you guys have much Thai food
No.
there,
I,
but yeah, it's
I've
more
never had
Thai.
Thai food. You?
I don't do
Oh,
Thai.
all right.
I think of
Oh yeah.
Meet the Parents. I mean, it always goes back there.
I know.
I've
I
said it
knew. I
before.
set you up.
Jack Talk Thai. Jack Talk Thai very well. Such a good movie.
Uh,
So, being an East Coast girl, you grew up on the East Coast, grew up in Jersey. Was there a lesson that you learned that, like you mentioned, like that kind of fire, that tenacity? Is there anything else that you learned here that you brought out with you to the West Coast that you really don't see a lot out there of? Is there anything else that you
Mm-hmm.
took from here? You're like, that was a life lesson I learned back over on the other side.
Hmm. Being real. And at the same time being sarcastic. I think my sarcasm comes from there, like being willing to just at times be silly. But I'd say definitely like being authentic. So I think there's just more, we're just willing to say what others aren't willing to say and not sugarcoat things. So it could be for those that didn't grow up with that, it could be harsh. It
Yeah.
could seem that way, but in the long run, you're gonna love me and you're gonna thank me.
And
And
yeah, and that's the thing. When we talked, we met a week and a half ago. The first time we talked, you had mentioned that you spent a lot of time in your 20s and into your early 30s, even where it was almost like you were doing things to please other people. So there's
mhm,
that dichotomy of like that East Coast like tough, like I'll fucking
thick
stomp on you,
skin.
yeah, like
Yeah.
thick skin thing, but also wanting to make people happy and pleasing people, which I that resonates with me. I
mm,
spent a lot of
Yeah.
time in my life just wanting to please people, just wanting to make people happy and not you know make any waves or bristle people the wrong way. So I totally understand that. So talk to us a little bit about that. You mentioned in your when we
yeah.
first talked about your 20s, like what was that journey like as you were kind of experiencing that, like wanting to please people, but also you're kind of torn because you knew it wasn't the most authentic version of yourself.
Yeah, so actually, it was only a specific type of person, my boyfriends. Whoever was my boyfriend, that was the area for me where I didn't have access to my authentic self, where I was really afraid to open up. and to be vulnerable. And I was stuck in appeasing and pleasing. But the rest of the people in my life, oh, they got me. I was always me. I was always real, all that. And it's actually something that my fiance right now noticed in the few months into us dating. He'd say, "You're so different when we're around your friends than you are with me." And I would say, well, I think you get more of me, but really, now I could see that he wasn't. There were parts that like I just didn't feel safe or comfortable to. And that really just goes back to what I learned in my childhood. So it's been a real journey to transform that part. And it was something that I knew for a long time. And I think it really took my person. It took the right person. Um, my current fiance, my fiance, who loved me through it, who for 2 years of our 4 year relationship so far would say to me, just be yourself, just be vulnerable. Like, I love you, just be yourself, just be vulnerable. He would say that as we would hang out and engage in conversations. And he was patient with me because I heard it. But in my nervous system, I wasn't ready for that. And as far as like, what does that even look like? Because I've never done that in a love relationship. Um, it was like my exploration. It was okay. I know what the word means, and I have no framework for it. It wasn't modeled to me, and so I really feel that he guided me, he modeled it for me, and he loved me through the moments that he still didn't get what he wanted, which was that.
So interesting. And I wonder, in those relationships that you mentioned, you didn't show up in a specific way in those relationships. Was it a was it a type? Were you searching out a specific type of individual that you would enter into a romantic relationship with, and you kind of repeated that same level or that same exact pattern?
Yeah, I mean, uh, it's all learned behavior. And this is what I learned from the relationship I had growing up with my father. So, for those that are listening, father, from what I teach, represents the first love in your life. It's your first experience of something outside of you loving you. So, mom, when you're in mom's womb, she's building that love for you with you over that 9 months, and you're in that energy and you don't know that that energy is not you. And when you're born and she holds you for the first time, you feel that same familiarity. So mom is the self, and that's what she models for you. But then the very first time that dad holds you, and he's oozing with love, and it's really become real for him in that moment, like, wow, I created this is real. uh there's this feeling of love, but but it feels different. Dad's energy is different than mom's.
Right.
And in that moment, you experience for the very first time something outside of you loving you. And therefore, dad is love, is like love from others, love from of the world. He represents everything that is not you. And so, depending on what your relationship is, or and how much dad was there for you or not there for you, will write that script of what's possible in love with others. So for me, my dad worked 16 hours a day running a hotel. So do the math. It was like 6 a.m. he left, 10 p.m. he got home. And, we'd have a little bit of time together on the weekends. We'd go to the beach as a family. I have an older brother. So the amount of like one on one time I got with dad, the one, which is the world, which is one on one time with others, right, with love, was very, very minimal. And so I learned that love isn't always there for you, and that others will put something else before you. that you're not important, that you're invisible. There were definite times in my life that I started to see that the way I operate is as if I don't exist. So I'll give you an example, and this is something I only recognized in my mid to late 20s. If I was invited, let's say you invited me to a dinner party, and there were like 15 people there, 10 people there, and you were the only one that I knew, I'd show up to the party and I would sit next to you and I would talk to you, and I probably wouldn't even make contact or look at or talk to, definitely not talk to anyone else that I didn't know. Because to, and how it would come off to people was as if, oh, she thinks she's better than everyone. She's so confident, which is part of like the persona that I survived in, that I put on. But if you asked me, I would say, oh no, no, I just think like I don't matter. Like, why would people want to talk to me? It was the completely opposite. It was like, I'm invisible to you. Like, you don't want to give me your time, because that's what was modeled to me. And having that reflected and starting to see that, I started to have the opportunity to choose something else, to shift out of that. And something like that was minor, was easy, but something like real love, that took up until my fiance. As much as I've been doing self-development work, been in the work, leading the work now for 16, almost 17 years. It's, you know how they say certain things can only be healed in love. And I think it's things like that, like matters of the heart, for me.
It's funny, when we had Chris on, there was a moment that I did this deep dive into a traumatic experience from my childhood and how it 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 manifests itself, and it showed up in a way of feeling like I was getting you know like left or abandoned, like an abandonment thing that happened. I trace it all the way back to like when I was 4 years old. In the moment, as I was talking to him, as you shared that story now, and thank you for sharing that story, what I started to think about was one, the whole father daughter love situation. Is it synonymous with fathers and sons? Is it the same
Yes.
situation? And the reason why I ask is, I had a situation, a traumatic situation that happened when I was in middle school, and I was being bullied really severely by three older students. They were in 8th grade, I was in 6th grade, so I was 12 years old and they were 14, and they bullied me incessantly. It was verbal, it was physical, you name it, across the board. It put me in a place of I was afraid going into school every single day, and I would avoid situations and opportunities where I might see them in the hallway, and I would get off the bus and try to sprint home. Some days I made it, some days I didn't, and I got my ass kicked a whole lot during that time. And I remember my father wanted me to fight the kid. He's like, you need to go up and kick Frankie's ass. You need to go kick his ass. And I was afraid, and I didn't move. I just froze. He said, you need to go fucking kick his ass. I just went up and I talked to him. I arranged for you to fight him. You're going to go fight him. And I didn't move. I froze, and he was so disappointed in me. He left my room. He slammed the door. And then my mother comes in the room, and she said, you just lost your best friend, your father, because I wouldn't go fight a kid. And I remember just breaking down, and I was like, I shuddered in tears, and it was like one of those moments. And he really didn't talk to me for like 2 weeks, a month. That's how long it felt. And the reason why I mention that story is like just to give you a little insight into my relationship with my father, our father. But what I started to recognize as as you were talking, was relationships that I would gravitate toward, romantic relationships, were people that were really like rough on me. They were really like even mean to me in certain situations. And I was like, why am I picking, like, why am I gravitating towards these people? But it makes sense that that's what I knew. That was what, love meant. And then also I
Yes.
thought, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong that my father doesn't love me anymore? So I got into this constant cycle of people pleasing and not, showing up as me, because I just wanted to make other people happy. So just thank you for sharing that, because it just, again, I feel like I owe you a copay or something, because it helped me kind of come to terms with a lot, like people that have listened to the podcast, that's a
Mm-hmm.
story that I've shared before, but it's one that
Mm.
really hurt. It still hurts when I tell this story.
Yeah.
It still cuts me. So, um, it was
Yeah,
just
the trauma wasn't actually the bullying.
no,
The trauma is actually you and the way I define trauma is any experience that your nervous system did not have the capacity to be with. And so when your mom came in and she said that, or when your dad behaved that way, that was a shock to your system. And I imagine this major fear of like, I just lost my source of love. Like dad is your
yeah.
source for love. Mom is your source for safety. Dad's your source for love. That that's a shock to the system. So yeah, well I could help you move
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah. That's like again, just listening to you, it's amazing. Like trying to, I'm thinking about my life and our lives, and just unpacking everything you're saying. And it's just so
Mhm.
relevant to what we've been through and our connection with our father, and being 14 years apart, and how different it was, and how
Yeah.
he wasn't present in my life at all, and he was really present in my brother's life. And that wasn't by accident, that was intentional. And we were just exposed to sports right away when we grew up, and that was how we got approval from our father. It was like, you do good in sports,
Mhm.
you get love. You don't do well in sports,
Yep.
I don't speak to you. We don't have the same relationship unless you perform at where I'm expecting you to perform. So all my life it was
Yeah.
based off of performance, right? I needed to do well, and if I didn't, I would be worried and anxious and so nervous and depressed, and know that I disappointed someone throughout every aspect of my life
Mm.
from that early experience. So it's like, again, it's amazing hearing this stuff, and that connects all the dots when you talk about that.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
I I thought I went into education. I became a teacher, a coach, and then a principal. I thought I wanted to help people because I didn't want people to experience the bullying. As I told the story to myself, the story was about the bullying. I was bullied as a sixth grade student, but that's not the
Yeah.
story. It took me a while to get to the story, a real story, and why it hurt so deeply as I told it. And it was because of that, because of what you just mentioned, and that the idea of that first love in your life. I never thought about it that way. You think about daddy
Mhm.
issues, and you think about females having daddy issues,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
boys with that, what is it, the Oedipus complex, where there's mommy issues. When you think
Mhm.
about trauma, and the fact that we went to the masculine feminine idea as well, do you see that men and women handle trauma in a different way? Do you feel like based on our sexes that we handle trauma in a different way, or is it just trauma is trauma and people deal with it in their own way?
You handle it based on how you learned to handle it. So and you learn by what you saw, what you heard, and what you felt energetically. So there were things that your mom and or your dad were dealing with, battling with within their own self. And how did they model to you how they handled that? Right? Did they turn to shutting down and using alcohol? Did they get aggressive? Did they meditate? Like, what was modeled to you as this is how you handle when life doesn't go sunshine and rainbows, when life goes sideways? And so it doesn't have to do with feminine or whether you're a female or a male. It has to do totally with how you were raised. And again, we've been in a patriarchy for a very long time where, for the most part, yeah, men are raised to be tough and successful and win at everything. And that's the whole focus. And you can't cry. And so that's very, very common. And then, of course, there's exceptions to that. And so it's all based on whatever you learned. Mhm. And sometimes there's, post traumatic growth. So there's people that have had traumatic experiences, and whether like I have a client that her mom was very abusive towards her, like physically, verbally, and she was able to take that and become a very strong woman who is, if someone's hurt, she'll run towards them. Like she's not afraid of that, right? So she was able to build her capacity to handle a lot of trauma, a lot of scary experiences that people that maybe grew up sheltered or, you know, in a vanilla life, so to speak, would be like, I don't know what to do in this case. So, yeah.
It's interesting as still working with educators and teaching teachers about community building practices, proactive behavior management strategies. How do you engage students? I also do a lot of work with teachers around trauma. And I talk to them about, especially in the last year or not, it's been so interesting. Teachers are teaching virtually. So they had to kind of
Yeah.
reshift and understand how to do that. But one thing that they were able to see is what's going on behind the students on the camera. You think about as students come into our classrooms and they're in front of us, you see how they show up. Think about it as an iceberg. You can see things at the waterline or above. You can see something about, maybe their gender, their ethnicity, physical characteristics, people that they hang out with, maybe past performance in school behavior, things like that. But then there's so much that's happening underwater that you can't see. And one of those things is trauma. Like we can't really see that. And then teachers are now exposed to students' lives via Zoom or Google Meets, where they're getting an opportunity to see what's going on behind them, their family situations. And my conversations with many teachers was they didn't realize that, wow, this is what Anthony was dealing with at home. I had no idea that as he's trying to learn, there's 7 little kids and 9 cats running around, and mom is chasing dad with a frying pan, and it's a wild scene. And it helped teachers realize how much these kids are dealing with on a regular basis. And I mention that because I don't think teachers are properly prepared to handle trauma. So when kids have those adverse childhood experiences, between 0 and 18 years old, those things like, death of a family member, it could be incarceration, substance abuse, even COVID was a traumatic experience for kids, having to withdraw from interactions with people and everything was happening virtually. What do teachers need to know about trauma to help kids that are experiencing it in school?
Mm. Whew. Well, they need to be trauma informed. But being trauma informed is learning a lot and understanding about self-regulation, about the nervous system, about how to be able to feel the energy, uh, yeah, the energy of where the child is at, and not just like talk at them, but really listen and not just listen to the words that they're saying, but really feel where their energy is at and match them there and be able to hold them there without getting overwhelmed. Like there's so much that's needed. I mean, teachers would be amazing. There's many coaches that aren't trauma informed. So it really takes getting grounded and embodied within themselves. So these teachers need to do the work because half the time they're getting triggered and hijacked into overwhelm and therefore into some survival pattern, which is either getting really rigid or controlling or aggressive in some way, or manipulative.
Right.
And that's meeting fire with fire. That's
Exactly.
more abuse
Yeah.
that doesn't serve. And so like in my facilitator training, it's a 9-month program, and the first 3 months of it, I let them know this is about your embodiment. You're not working with anyone yet. This is the next layer and level of your embodiment. And this is for graduates of my work. So they've already had foundation work, but it's like, let's get you even one layer deeper, because the more you can embody and you can sustain and hold and be with, the better chance that whoever you're sitting across and working with, that you'll have the capacity to support them. It's like, if you joined a gym Who would you have spot you? Someone that hasn't, that's frail and hasn't done it themselves and that's never lifted that, or someone that has been training for a while. So it's the same kind of thing, is that they need to do it themselves first. Everyone needs to um, face their traumas, and said more lightly, everyone needs to take their power back,
That's
to build back their inner strength.
that is that's
Uh,
beautiful.
yeah, our thank you. Our power, we've given our power away to things that we faced, or that we experienced, that we're now scared to face. We've compartmentalized it and created just survival mechanisms and behaviors. And I'm just going to stay in my little safe bubble over here, where you are limited and therefore not in your full potential, not in your full power. And so we all get to heal our traumas and therefore take back our power and have resiliency, emotional resiliency. Because at the end of the day, life's going to keep handing you stuff. Like 18 months ago, were we expecting a thing called pandemic? No. And that rocked a lot of people's lives in a way that they were not prepared for. And life is going to keep handing us challenges through life, whether it's just even the inevitable, which is, when you have to face your parents' mortality or your own mortality, all these things. And when things happen and they don't kill you, you don't die from it, what actually is happening? Some experience, some sensation in your body. That's it. You didn't die. You didn't end up on the street. You asked this girl out. You dated for a bit. Then she ended things with you. You didn't die from it. What happened? Oh, we call that, well, I got heartbroken, or my ego got hurt. Really, it's some visceral, some sensation. And that's the thing that people run from, or people avoid dating, for example, to keep it light here, because they don't want to experience that again. What is that you don't want to experience? A sensation? So when you can build your emotional resiliency, when you can build your capacity to be with any tick, any sensation that happens, when your nervous system can handle that, then you're powerful. Then no matter what life hands you, you know that you can handle it. And that's what's important for all of us to get to. Because right now we're heading in the direction of more fear,
Yeah.
is all that's being pushed on us. And so it's time to take a step back, look inward, feel the feels that are there, and realize, oh, I can be with this. I can be with this. And I can learn more and more how to navigate these sensations.
It's interesting thinking about, you mentioned teachers and how they handle situations, and that antiquated way, like an autocratic type teacher who is, I am the sage on the stage. I am the one with the mic in my hand. You will listen to me, do as I say. Not really interested in how students learn. All the way to a permissive teacher who's like, I just want to be your best friend, and we're gonna draw rainbows, and you're in charge of the classroom, and kids don't understand what a boundary is. And I often talk about like creating this balanced approach. It kind of has to be. They need to know that there are boundaries. There are things there, but also we want to hear your voice. Your voice needs to be a part of the space. I think too about teachers don't have a lot of teachers, especially like I don't want to sound like ageist. Is that ageism?
We'll go with
where
it. Just go
where
with it.
it's the old thing was like it's not everybody gets a trophy. It's not rub some dirt on it. Just deal with it. Coaches that I had that were really, I remember being shamed in sports. So I don't think a lot of educators that we are imparting this power to like help our children grow and learn are really truly understanding of what trauma means and how to help students that are dealing with themselves, because like you mentioned, they have to understand and do the work themselves before they can help someone else. That's the tricky part, is how do you get
It's a top down.
yeah, it's and how can you get people to look at themselves in a way that's so scary and so uncomfortable to go through it? It's by saying it's a vibration, it's an emotion. You can handle this. And once you step into it, you're like, you know what? It sucks a little bit, but you know what? I was able to do it. I didn't die. I'm going to take another step into it, another step into it. That's the only way that it's going to change for kids, is if teachers really understand that.
Yeah, and it's the projection. It comes up in projections in your life too. Like when you're holding on to all these emotions, you don't express them. They come up in other ways, and they project them onto the students or what they haven't battled with themselves. And I feel like that's such a powerful thing that you said, as far as I've never heard that before, emotional resiliency. It just always refer to it as like emotional intelligence and as like a blanket statement, but I love that because that's literally like tackling it head on and sitting with the emotions themselves. And you realize they're not that scary. They are just vibrations. Like, I ask people, like, what is fear? What is anger? What is, and usually it's like, if you talk to at least men, it's like they're happy or they're pissed, or like happy or angry. Those are the only two emotions that they know. That's how they identify their entire life.
Yeah.
And, I look at them and it's like, well, first of all, get your vocabulary down with emotions. And then when you feel something, tell me what that feels like in your body. So like, anger or like anxiety for me, when I'm really anxious, it depends on what the anxiety is. Let's say I'm like high. If I'm like I'm scared of heights, right? So it's like, that is like, I feel it in like this warm sensation in like my chest and like honestly like almost near like my balls. It sounds crazy, but like I feel like it's like I'm like getting this weird feeling like all throughout like the core of my body, and it's like warm. And it's like a knot, but I don't really know. And it's so strange, but totally different from like the anxiety of if I'm gonna give a speech, which is all up in my neck, and I feel everything in here, and it's sensation up through my neck and in my throat, because it prevents me from like speaking essentially whenever I'm about to do like some sort of public speaking thing. So it's amazing to hear that, and that emotional resiliency that you spoke about.
Yeah. So can I give you a couple of more tips or
Oh,
pointers
Oh
to
absolutely.
how to
help him
identify?
help him
Yeah.
with his balls, please. He
Yeah,
needs
I
help.
just I didn't know how to say. I was like my pelvic floor.
Yeah.
Listen, that's
Oh,
what we
yeah,
talk
all
about.
good.
Listen,
Whatever.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
So we look at the felt sensations and naming it in many ways. So does it have a temperature, which you said, a color, a texture, a size, a shape? Is it a weight to it? Is it heavy? Is it light? Is it hollow? So as many ways that you can laser focus on it and name it, and then just observe it. Just get curious about it, the sensations, and see if it changes or dissipates or moves. That's it. The challenge is most of us are trying to fix it. How do I fix it? How do I make it go away? And when you do that, you're going back up into your head, trying to figure out how to move energy in your body. And our bodies are brilliant. Our bodies do it all. I always share the story or this analogy of when you burn your finger or you cut yourself, what do you go do? You grab the ointment and the Band-Aid, you grab ice, right? Like that's what we do. We think that's doing the healing. And really what's doing the healing is the body. And I believe that the reason that when we experience a cut or a burn, we say, ouch, ouch, this hurts, this is painful. The reason there's a strong sensation is by design, so that the body, the brain, it signals to the rest of the body, the brain, all of it, this area, 911 needs our support. Send healing over here. And the healing begins. The challenges with our emotions is that we've learned to override them with our mind, to fix it, to make it want to go away, to tell ourselves it's fine, I don't feel this way, let me take this to numb it, all that stuff. We try and control it instead of loving and getting curious, like giving so much attention there, just like the attention of a burn. As much as you try and not focus on it, your focus is there. It's intense. So, same thing, bringing that attention to wherever you're feeling it as soon as you're present to it, and then naming it with love, compassion, curiosity, staying with it. And what you're doing is your nervous system is attuning to it. It's like, oh, okay, all right, this is what there is to be with, and it shifts,
You
and you build that capacity.
I asked the question before if men and women experience trauma in a different way, like how they actually experience it, and you had mentioned that it was more what they were taught, what they saw, how what was emulated for them as
Mm-hmm.
trauma was experienced in their life. I'm sure there are differences in the way that men and women process through. Anthony mentioned, there's like this. Maybe that's our father. I mean, it was like happier. It was angry or happy.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of emotional understanding in the middle there. You definitely knew how he felt as soon as he walked in the door, and either you engaged with him or you got the hell away from him. There was one of the two things there. But with the men that we work with and the people that we see on a regular basis, it's men especially have a tough time like understanding, one, what their emotions are, and then two, that it's okay. It's okay to feel vulnerable. It's okay to like lean into those emotions and not. I know what I did. I pushed everything down for a long period of time. I like stuffed it
Mm-hmm.
down in here, and I'm like, I don't want anybody to see this. I'm just gonna like lock it in and not be myself. You mentioned that your
Yeah.
fiance was like, just be you. That's all I want. It's just a fucking raw, real you. And that hit home with me because I stuff down shit so much that you forget who that raw, real you is. And I think a lot of it is,
Mm-hmm.
men are just afraid to show that real side and like really look internally to do that work. So do you see a difference in the way that men and
Mm.
women handle trauma, like try to deal with it or work through it?
Yeah, I mean, inside of my program, I've definitely attracted a lot of alpha males, which I'm grateful for, meaning ones that, normally wouldn't do this, have never cried before in their life, and I get them to cry like Niagara Falls. So I'm grateful that they feel safe, but I think that the women have been leading the path and the way for more inner child healing work. And men are now starting to catch up to that. That I think there's still this desire to gravitate towards something that's going to be more macho and like a tough way as opposed to feely kind of way. And the truth is that the feely is actually the tough work. It's what takes the most courage. So they discover that. But again, that's again part of the limited programming that they're handed with. So, but as far as like specific traumas, um, I've seen it all. That like I really still don't feel that it's like more women than men. I've seen women that hide and they don't feel safe and they're just like staying in their shell. I've seen men that stay behind their wall and it takes longer to break. So I think there's an energy to it. Yes, like the way that I just
Yeah.
described. That for women, it'll be like more this like timid, shy. I'm like, no, I just want to still stay in my shell. And men are like, no, I think I'm good. Yeah, I'm just here to watch and observe. Yeah, for those that aren't ready for it, as I look at people that have participated in my work, but then equally enough, you'll see the men and the women that are willing, that are ready, and that could both face it in similar ways, in huge releases. Like I said, I've seen some, big quote unquote tough alpha guys. Some of them.
Oh yeah, we
I've
do.
cracked them to cry. I
That's
remember,
beautiful.
I remember, Angelo, what did it for him is when I guided him through healing something and then I gave him the new affirmation to repeat, which was, I'm a gift to others. And as soon as he repeated that, it just got to his bones, and what a gift he
Oh
is to the
yeah,
world.
absolutely.
Yeah.
He does great men's work. And it was Niagara Falls, not all over the place. It's my favorite. It's my favorite to see men finally give themselves permission to get in touch and feel an emotion that they've never accessed before and definitely didn't see their father model to them. So, but some men did have fathers that were mushy gushy. And it's like, oh, my dad cried so much. And, he needed more of a backbone. My mom was controlling. And so it's like, oh, I know how to be weak and cry. So again, it wasn't still, even though it was modeled to them, it wasn't seen as the way to be. It was still seen as weak.
And the men and women both that are reaching out to you, they're ready to do the work. They're understanding, like, I'm going to make a commitment, and when if you're doing a polar plunge, it's gonna be fucking cold. The water's gonna be 39 degrees, and your balls are gonna shrivel up. We'll go back.
Why'd you look at me when you said balls?
You open the door to your crotch.
I'm sorry.
I'm just.
That's just being honest of where I feel it. We're describing what
We're
it.
describing an
God, I'm
emotion.
being authentic here. Let me just do me. I have balls. Is this news to people?
At least one more time in the episode, I'm gonna bring them up.
I know you are.
You know it's gonna be fucking cold when you do a polar plunge. You jump in the water, you're ready for it. So people that are working with you, they're like, you know what?
Yeah.
I know what's ahead. I know I'm going to do this difficult work, but I'm ready. I'm gonna, jump in the water. I'm going full force forward. What do you say to people that aren't ready to do that? So now they're like standing on the sand and they're like, it's cold. I'm not going in. I'm not ready for that right now. What's one step someone could take that's really, really like, that's not for me?
Yeah, it's very interesting because I feel that even people that are ready, they're still very scared because it's so unknown. And there's the fear of, but what if I'm that one person that this doesn't work for? And I let them know, let me save you time. It's not going to work for you. They're like, what? I'm like, it's only going to work with you. Only. Like, the modules work. I'll show up 100%. So it's really up to you how you show up. Just like a gym. You could have the nicest gym, best equipment, great trainers, cleanest locker room. But if you don't do your part, you're not going to get the results. So there is that fear, and it's common even for people like that. For what comes up for them is their patterns, is that like sabotage. And there's people that do sign up that aren't ready. And so they will take their time in the program. And I think that's the gift of being in a group program is you got those that are willing to be the lead players and jump on the court, and you got those that are still sitting on the sidelines watching and seeing and testing it out. And then, for Chris and I feel our part of our job is to recognize who's still playing small and sitting on the sideline and calling them forward. Like, if someone doesn't show up to a few calls and they're not really doing the work, I'll give them a personal call because I care. And I know that most likely they've gotten away with their whole life thinking that they don't matter and no one sees them and that they're invisible and that they could just keep doing this and no one's actually going to stand for them. And so when I do that, those are the people that then are like, wow, like she believes in me. That's what we all needed. That's what you needed from your father. You needed him to just believe in you that, you know what? These kids, let them do what they do. You're amazing. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to prove yourself to them. that's just because they're scaredy, right? He didn't say that. So I show them that belief, that I believe in them, that they can do it, and that makes a difference for people. So I don't know that I answered your question. I went off on my own journey here, and I do want to answer your question for people that aren't ready, that aren't there yet, that don't feel like they can take that step. Check in with what are you ready for? Because I only want people that are ready. This is not a program that we do like discounts for, or like, here's a sale this month, or let me sell you on it. Because again, if you're not ready, then you're not going to do the work and get the results. So for people that aren't asking themselves, what am I ready for? And take that baby step in your growth. Am I ready to read a book about this stuff and start to become aware? I mean, awareness is what I call stage one of the 5 stages of transformation. Um, and by doing that, you're inviting in the universe to support you and show you where, oh wow, this is here, and if I don't face this, it's not just going to go away, it's going to be here, and now I know. And they say like ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is a tragedy in that case. And so when you start to become aware of it, um, you may really look at, well, what you have to get to a point where the fear of moving forward is much less, right, than the fear of staying where you're at, the pain of staying with what you're at. And so, yeah, most people, it takes them reaching the point where, as much as they think that they can compensate for it in some way or figure it out, they get to that place where they can't, where they really experience how powerless they are in doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different
Right.
result.
Yeah, definition of insanity.
And it's
Yeah.
just you talk, and it just we talked about this so much today, so that's why I want to bring it up, because we talked about it with Chris, and we talked to someone else today just about the idea of vulnerability, right? And how, for me, it scares the crap out of me, because again, that's like my protection. I've been protecting that my whole life. Like, my authentic self is also, I look at it as my most vulnerable self, and I get so scared of presenting that, because if I do that in my head, because of all of my past experiences from my childhood, that's going to get me killed. That's going to get me ostracized. I'm going to be alone and kicked out of my tribe. And it's like trying to unpack that for me is such a scary place to be in. So like, when you talk about this, I just can imagine how freeing it is to finally unleash that and have someone like you to be like, I still accept you. I still love you for who you just showed me, who you really are in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. And it's unfortunate that still in this moment, I think my biggest challenge as someone that my mission is to end generational trauma and normalize healing trauma, that my biggest challenge is that it's not normalized, and that people still have it as this like scary thing, instead of like it's going to be the most freeing experience on the other side, and it's going to take some work, and you don't have to do it alone. You get to do it with a tribe. You get to do it with those that have already paved the path for you. You get to do it with tools that are, proven and work. You don't have to do it alone, or, invent the wheel yourself. But I sympathize, and I'm so far removed from that place for myself. Actually, let me check in with that. Oh, I take that back. Um, I can sympathize with it, and I can relate to it, because there's areas that I'm now in my relationship exploring and stepping into. And I'll vulnerable share here. I'm about to hire a sexologist. So, my fiance and I really want to take our intimacy and the way that we engage in intimacy and in the bedroom to a level that is beyond what uh, mm, what we've learned and what we know and what we've been taught and what's possible and the patriarchy and all that um, is vulnerable at this moment. And I remember having my call with her a couple of weeks ago, and to her, she's been doing this 25 years, and she's like, "Oh,
I got
yeah,
this. Yeah.
in the bat, like it's done. You're good in my
Yeah. It's a
hands." And I'm
layup.
like, "Wow." Yeah, and it's the same way that I feel when I speak to a new prospect and they share their story and I'm like, "Yep, I've heard this one 55 times." Oh, and then I'm like, I'm so excited because I know it's possible and I know they don't. She's like, "I got you. I got you." And I said, and even though she says that, taking the step, and it's not only the financial investment, but it's the investment of like our efforts, feels scary, feels vulnerable, feels like, but what if we're the ones that like nothing changes from it? I'm like, well, that was a waste. And I know that's not true because in every coach that I've ever invested in, I don't look for the best deal. I don't look for the cheapest ones. I look for the experienced ones. um, so in everyone that I've worked with, yeah, I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I grew from that. But yeah, there's still a part. So you want to acknowledge, Anthony, that it's not all of you that feels this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a part of you. There's just one part of all of you that has that experience and that opinion. And then there's also another part that's like, ooh, I'm really curious.
Yeah.
And another part that's like, oh, come on, we could do this. Like, would be exciting. And another part that's like, I think it'd be fun.
And I'm
And
deciding to listen to that one part that's like says you're scared, and it's like, oh,
yeah,
that's correct. That's my truth. So
yeah. It's what I call, when you go to dinner, when you guys are from New Jersey, so I'm sure you've had dinner with are you guys Italian?
We are.
yeah,
Last name is Meralda.
Okay, yeah. All right. So when you have dinner with your whole family, do you have that one relative that's really loud?
Well, that's our
we
sister Tara. That's oh yeah.
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah. So everyone hears Tara. That's for sure. And so in my program, I actually use this metaphor of the dinner party. And that one of our journaling practices is that you have a dinner party with yourself. Every time something comes up, if you think that you could solve this in your head, it's like trying to hear the rest of the people at the dinner, but all you hear is your sister Tara.
It's impossible. you can't. There's no way.
You can't. So when you're challenged with something or when you're feeling something, bring it to the journal. Dump it out as if you were recording the dinner conversation, right? So you would hear all the parts. Maybe at 1 second you hear Tara, and then for a second you could hear Dennis, and then you could hear your mom, right? So writing it all out, and then you could read back and choose to listen to the other parts. And so we do this with what I call our parts, which are the ego, which is just there to protect you. We do need the ego. It's your ultimate protector.
Mm-hmm.
And it usually sounds like, well, the ego just wants to avoid the internal and focus outside. Let me focus outside of me. So anything external. Oh, well, you're better than that person. So, or you could win this, or you have to do this. Yeah. Or you're right. She's wrong, right? Like in a fight with someone, if you're fighting with your girlfriend or something, it's like, well, she's so wrong. I'm so right. That's your ego speaking right there. Then you have your inner critic. Anthony, you should have done this, or you did this wrong. You could have done this better. We all know what our inner critic sounds like. Then you have your inner child. And your inner child is what I also call your emotions. And so anytime you're expressing any emotion, like I'm scared, I'm sad, um, yeah, I'm frustrated. That's little Anthony speaking. And then there's your heart. And your heart should scare the fuck out of you. Because that's the ultimate courage, right? Because what your heart desires is scares us so much because it's our heart's desire that what if I don't get that? Then it's like I just didn't get the one thing I really wanted. So all your wants, all your desires, that's your heart speaking. And your access to that is your inner child, is feeling through all the emotions. So imagine this. Imagine your little boy walking into the room. Dennis, you're a father. Anthony, I don't know if you are, but
Not a
you're an
father.
uncle.
I am an uncle. Godfather. There we go.
Yes, godfather. So your niece, your nephew, whoever, or for you, Dennis, your one of your kids walks into the room and they're expressing, I'm scared. I'm really scared to go to class and to present my project or whatever. What would they need to hear from you?
Well, I would usually like bring them closer to me first, just like that,
Yeah,
relational thing like that. Like I am
Embrace
there
them.
to support you. So even
yeah,
just like that nonverbal communication. I'm such a student of,
yeah.
so I would be really conscious of my nonverbal communication, and I would say one, it's going to be okay. Like I would like kind of say, it's going to be okay.
I'm here.
I'm here. Like let's work through this together. I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not
And
alone.
yep.
Yeah.
And I also believe without giving them the answer, like helping them come to it themselves and go through that journey themselves, but just physically being there, letting them know that I'm here to listen and to support.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you would probably give like, I believe in you. You're smart. You're gonna do great. You're gonna
You got
affirm
this.
them,
You got
right?
this.
Yeah, and so this is the same thing that we get to do. The challenge is when you don't take it out of your head and onto paper, and you're just for a second noticing the anxiety, and then the ego takes over real quick. So it's like, we don't need this. We're good for now. You're good. You're okay. You don't need this. You're not going to hear your heart or your inner child. Your ego is going to step in and protect you. Oh, let's just go watch a movie instead. Let's not do this. It's going to distract you. And so the most important part is getting it out on paper and then reading it back and looking for that child. So anywhere that you're mentioning, I feel dot, 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 or I am dot, 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 or I feel like, which usually what comes after that is some limiting belief. I feel like she doesn't listen to me. Oh, well, where do I feel like I'm not heard? Oh, where does little Anthony feel like he's not heard? That others don't care what he has to say. Oh, okay. Now again, let me imagine little Anthony coming into the room and saying that. I don't feel heard. People don't listen to me. I'm not liked. What would you do? Like you said, nonverbal communication, hold. I'm here. It's okay. You can feel it. And I imagine there'd be some sadness there. Yeah, you could feel that. Where do you feel it? You can feel it. And then moving through that. And, when we do that with our kids, they get to actually move through their experience. And most parents did not learn to do this. They learn to fix it. Oh, you're fine. Why are you making a big deal? Don't make a big deal. Go play with your sister. Go outside. And then they get more frustrated because they just want to be held in their experience. And it's the same thing we get to do for ourselves. We get to hold ourselves through our experience. Because when you hold a child through their experience, they'll move through it in about 90 seconds. And then what happens? It's forgotten. They're excited and they're ready to create something next. Oh, can we go do this? Or come do that? Or bye, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go play. And they feel amazing again. And it's the same thing. You want to access your creativity, you want to access your courage, your heart. You have to tend to the inner child. You have to tend to the emotions that are there.
I want to give little Anthony a hug.
Fuck. I want to give.
Give me a hug. There we go. I want to be here for you.
Doesn't it make you? It makes me sad when I think about it, though. Like, I want to give myself what I needed as a child, and like, every time I
Yes.
think about this, it makes me so upset. And like, even though like I can still work with that, who I am today, like I'm just a grown up little Anthony, and
Mm-hmm.
but I'm just like, oh, I wish I was there for that person and could give him what he needed and what he was looking for. Because I know so many instances that I needed something and
Yeah.
I didn't get it. And I know that that shows up in so many areas of my life, and it really makes me so sad to think about that. Like when you said little Anthony, I'm just like, fuck, little Anthony, like this little guy just needs
Yeah.
some help. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's okay. It's okay, Anthony. You can feel it
I'm
right
feeling it.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel that sadness. Yeah. And this is exactly the journey that we take people on in training camp for the soul. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. It's the giving yourself what you needed from yourself, aka mom. Like giving that foundation back of safety and unconditional love and the nurturing, and then feeling solid within yourself to know that no matter what, mom's here with me. No matter what, I'm safe. Now I'm ready to step out into the world and face the dragon that I need to slay. So, the father issues, I always tell my clients that are like, oh, all my stuff is daddy. Mom was good. I'm like, forget mom, dad. Look at it as self and others. Do you really feel solid within yourself that you know to show up for yourself and create your own safety? Oh no, not there yet. Yeah, let's get that down because you will not be ready to step into the world and to slay that dragon and to create what you want to create and to be vulnerable with others and to step on that stage and let others see you until you nurture and reconnect and learn to mother yourself the way that mom never mothered you, and to learn to therefore father yourself.
And not you mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
awareness was the first step. You said there were 5 steps, and awareness was the first. Can you walk us through what the other 4 would be? How do we go about this process?
Okay.
Is that like do I have to
Yes.
pay the tuition to get those 5 steps, or
No. Sorry, that was my Jersey sarcasm coming in. I actually I love sharing this. I think it's very important, and I share it on many podcasts. Because I think a lot of times what's missing is that we don't know what transformation really takes. And for those that are eager, ready, growth seekers like myself, I started on this journey 16 and a half years ago. And for 8 of those years, I was skipping steps unknowingly. I was trimming weeds. And so I do feel that it's important for people to know, because for those of you that have been on the path for a while and you're frustrated, like where I was 8 years in, was frustrated that life still looked the same, but I've been at this for 8 years, and you feel almost hopeless, like you want to give up and like, okay, well, maybe I just can't change and this is the way it is and I just have to accept it. Then as you listen to these 5 stages, notice what you skipped or notice where you're at. And for those of you that this is new for you and maybe have never embarked on it and you want to know what real transformation takes and is, then listen up to this. So stage 1 is awareness. And awareness is usually what leads people to the work, whether it's some area of their life where they're challenged. And when you work with me, we don't just deal with reacting. Like, I'm not just giving you tools for you to react to the next thing that you become aware of. we're actually going to do a deep dive, balls deep. Had to say it.
Well
Thank
done.
you. There it is. You
Well
can't
done.
do another one now because she did the last one, so I don't want to hear my
I
balls.
did it. I did
Thank you,
it.
Anat. Appreciate
You're welcome. Um, so we're going to do a deep dive to uncover all areas of your garden, everything that's there. So we're going to bring more stuff to your awareness before you wait for it to happen to you one day in your life, maybe never. So we're going to bring everything that's been dormant up to the surface for you to see, right? So awareness is where people start. It's very important, and like that's how much deeper there is to unveil it. That's stage one. Stage two is what I call acceptance and commitment. And to me, this is one of the most important steps and one of the most misunderstood steps. Because most people, when there's something they become aware of, they don't like it and they want to fix it and change it. And how do I make it go away? I've lived with this anxiety all this time. How do I make it go away? And that in and of itself is not acceptance. And in that moment, they are disconnecting from being able to continue on with those stages. And so acceptance is has a lot of context to it. It's really the start of learning to be with what you are experiencing and to accept what did happen to you, and not just accept it on a mind level, like, okay, daddy worked 16 hours a day, but I know that he was just providing for the family and that he loved us, right? That's the compartmentalizing, that's the logicking, that's the mindset work. And I'm not knocking mindset work. The mind is important, but not to override our experience. And so, in accepting it, is allowing yourself to feel that. Like I said to you a few minutes ago, Anthony, yeah, feel that. Feel the sadness of what little Anthony wanted, but he didn't get. Like he needed that. He really needed that from mommy and from dad. And he didn't have that. And so spending some time like in that level of like accepting it. And this is where at times people can't move forward on their own, because accepting this may mean like accepting something. I'm trying to find an example here. Accepting something about your father may mean that you actually have to forgive him. But you've been holding on to the story that I'm never talking to him again. He's a fucking asshole. I hope I can curse.
That's
I
fine.
imagine I can.
Absolutely.
Right. And so there's the holding on to the survival mechanisms that you've created for yourself for so long, right? Your new truth, like, nope, cut him out of my life or cut her or I'm done or like whatever your truth is. Acceptance is going to rattle and shake your truth, your identity up until that moment. And so this is where being guided and working with someone and being in a group where other people are also being willing to accept and shed their old beliefs and old identity is important and supportive. So that's stage two. So acceptance. And once we get there, then there's a level of commitment that you could really commit to. And then stage three is getting to the root of it. And the root of it is below the ground, right? And a lot of times, like my experience of all the work I did for 8 years was on the surface. And the root of it existed in the emotional body, in our sensations. And, I don't know if you've heard this or if you read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, but the issues are in your tissues. Your trauma lives in your body, in your energetic body, in your fascia, and all of that. So you got to get to the root of it. And this is where the tools start coming in. This is where we guide you to tracking. Well, Anthony, where is that sadness that you felt a few minutes ago? Where is that in your body? Does it have a shape, a color, texture, right? Naming it. As well as the root of it could be if you remember a particular time, like Dennis, when mom walked into the room and said to you, you just lost your best friend. If we could rewind the movie, Dennis, and go back to that moment and press play, what did you see? What did you hear? So you heard mom say this, you saw her face, you saw dad's face of disgust at you. How did you feel? What did you say to yourself in that moment? So reconnecting to that experience in that moment so that you're feeling where you stored, where in your body you stored that trauma. And then observing it, and then holding and giving little Dennis or little Anthony exactly what they needed in that moment. That if you knew you were safe, what did you need to express in that moment? Or what would you have done? Or if you knew you were safe, what did you need to hear from mom? Or what would you have expressed to dad in that moment? So we start to edit the script or add it on a root level where we could edit it and rewrite it and complete the loop that never got completed but got diverted. Because in that moment, Dennis, you didn't have, your nervous system did not have the capacity to process that experience. So what'd you do? You came up with some survival mechanism. What was that? Do you know?
I know exactly. What I tried to do was not make waves. I needed to change how I showed up to make other people happy. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do whatever I have to do to not have that confrontation. To just so if dad wants me to do this, I'm gonna do it and not make any waves. I'm not going to argue with people. I'm just gonna kind of like conform. And I
Yep.
became a
Yep.
chameleon in my life for a long period of time, and I didn't
Yep.
understand why. I really didn't understand
Yep.
why.
Yep. And there you go. And so the process in stage three is to go back, complete that loop, rewrite it, free that energy. And that's stage four. Stage four is releasing and then replacing. So I want to talk about releasing for a second, because the body releases in many ways. And some of these people experience and they don't even realize that it's a good thing. So when you start tremoring, if your body starts shaking, usually when we start shaking, we think it's a negative thing. We say, wait, why am I shaking? Why am I shaking? And you like stop yourself from shaking, right? That's a very common way that the nervous system downregulates and releases energy. Another form of release is yawning. And we think we're tired. No, no, no. You're not tired. Unless it's like 2 a.m. and you haven't slept all day. Your body is releasing. And when I mean yawning, I mean consistent yawning. Like I've seen clients that in a matter of a minute will yawn 40 times. It's just yawning. I'm a yawner. I yawn a lot when I'm releasing. Burping is another form of release. And again, I do not mean because you just drank a soda or ate a great meal. And it's also could be consistent in big burps, especially if you had the tendency to stuff things down, right? Like you, Dennis, if
Yeah.
you've been stuffing energy down, then yeah. Um, crying. Yeah, I mean, that's what we did when we were born. It's a very powerful form of release. So letting energy move through you as liquid, right? Let it flow out of you. So crying is a form of release. Catharsis is a form of release. Sometimes I mean, if you think about the energy of anger, it's intense and it wants to be screamed into a pillow or punched. It wants to move in that way. Caveat there though, there's people that are so used to it. If it's not big, then I'm not releasing. And clients like that have a tendency to have big releases, I've actually learned to have them not use that anymore because what they're doing is they're avoiding the softer releases. They'll like, I just want to tremor and cry because I felt so powerless. And then my favorite is laughing attacks. That's another form of release. And I've seen that many times. And it always catches people by surprise what they find where joy is actually hidden underneath a traumatic experience or a powerless experience for them. And then sometimes hot and cold flashes, and sometimes it just wants to dissipate. So it just depends on it. But those are the ways that the body releases when we move through those stages and we do that process. So now that it's released, and this is something that I notice a lot in people that do shadow work, inner child healing work, like clients of mine that are like, oh yeah, I've done work like this. What's missing a lot of times is the replacing, is that now that they've cleared their old, they're not actually planting in something new. And so just like a script, if you're removing something, a behavior, like what are you putting in instead? So, because otherwise you're just going to act the same way. This is actually very common with plant medicine. And it was my experience with plant medicine is plant medicine, whether it's mushrooms or ayahuasca, we'll just stick to those two for now, or even smoking cannabis, has a very powerful way of dropping us into our body, down regulating the nervous system. And so the body could start having releasing and purging and all these things. And that was my experience when I've done plant medicine. But you come out of it and you're like, wow, that was an amazing experience. I feel so much lighter. But if you don't know what you actually released on a conscious level, what beliefs were there, and you're not putting in new beliefs, new behaviors, you're just going to reinforce the old. And that happened to me over and over again. But that's a whole nother podcast interview
Part two.
about, how to work with psychedelics. So making sure that you replace, you really check in. And a lot of times, when there's space, you'll feel like this is gone. Like I feel spacious. There is room for something new. And so what's available? What's possible now that wasn't before? And not answering it from your mind, like, oh, well, I removed the belief that like I have to please everyone. So now it must be that like, I get to have boundaries. Like it's not a logical thing. It's allowing it to just come through from your body of like what wants to be birthed and created. And sometimes it could be, I love myself. I accept myself. That someone comes into a healing seat, as I call it, experience, and they worked on, a really big trauma and belief, but they've never held themselves before. They've never accepted this. They've always rejected it. They've always not wanted to feel that anxiety or that fear. And that experience, what just became possible for them at that level was, I'm here for me. I love myself. I accept myself. So either way, you get to create and replace with the beliefs that you want. So now stage 5. Stage 5 is what I call integration and education. So think about your garden again. There were weeds in the garden. We got to the root. We planted new seeds. But if you don't water it, nothing's going to grow. And so when you plant a new belief, it's a belief. It's a statement. You have to go out in the world and act it out and behave for it to become real. And so taking action is what's going to integrate. And that could be anything from a new behavior to stopping old behaviors. If you have a new belief of I am healthy and I am strong, well, an action could be going into your fridge, into your cupboards and cleaning out all the junk food. That's an action. Another action is joining a gym and then showing up for the gym, right? So it's like, how much can I start to act as the person that has these new beliefs? And then what I call education, because sometimes we don't know what to do. Like for me, declaring I am vulnerable, I was like, cool, great. I know the meaning, but I don't know how to act that out. I have no framework for it. And this is where reading a book on intimacy or going to a retreat specifically for something like that, listening to an expert that covers that on a podcast. This is where there's actually room for their model, their tools to be received. And what I see a lot of times to tie this all together is people skip stage 2, 3, and 4. They go from, oh, I'm aware, I have this horrible pattern behavior. I don't want to be like this anymore. I want to be like this. So I'm going to go pick up a book about it. I'm going to do some Googling research on it, and I'm going to start to act like that person. And so for me, for example, to go from like, well, okay, my partner tells me I'm still not vulnerable. Oh, let me go pick up a book on vulnerability that says, okay, so sit and eye gaze and tell him how you feel. Okay, it's giving me steps of what to do. But if I have beliefs of don't trust men, men will hurt you, you're not safe, you're invisible, then that's going to sabotage it. And that's what you see a lot. You see people that are committed and that are making effort, but that are failing at it over and over again because they're not clearing what's still there.
There's so much there. There's one piece that you said, and thank you for that journey. That blew my mind. One thing that you said that like dug deep was when you were talking about the spot of like how it manifests itself, the crying, the release portion of
Yes,
it,
nice.
the tremor part is what got me, and so a deep dive, and I'll share a vulnerable spot here, having gotten out of a marriage, being divorced within the last year. I'm dating someone now, Julie, who was the first female guest on the podcast, and going through like talking about trauma and how trauma manifests itself and how toxicity in past relationships and how it shows up, and there was always a time where I was kind of guarded about how I showed up in my marriage and how I felt about myself in my marriage, and I just protected it. I didn't want to go there because I felt like if I showed her that part of me or how I was, that she would think less of me. And so I didn't deal with it. And then finally one night we're sitting on my couch and she's like, what is it? And I kind of like let it loose. I let it out. And I was like, there's a part of me that is so afraid to tell you how I was, because I felt like I was such a puss. I really like the way that I showed up was so passive, and I got kind of walked on, and I now understanding like where that came from in my life and how I learned it and how it just became what I did in a relationship. But I was so afraid to tell her that because the healing that I've done that's not the way I show up in my relationship with Julie. And I feel like the way that I am and the way that I process things and the way that I handle emotions and even just being able to, set boundaries for myself and stand up for myself in a way that's healthy in a relationship. I was so afraid to say that. As I was going through saying it, I couldn't stop shaking. I was like, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with me? I was like, but the tremor part, I was like, I didn't understand why I was shaking in that way, but it was a release of that, like letting myself feel it and just be like, all right, I'm letting it out right now. So as I'm going through it, I didn't recognize that that's what I was doing. And thank you for sharing it. I mean, it was really helpful for me to continue to process through that whole experience.
The amount of breakthroughs I feel like Dennis and I have both had
really?
in this, short conversation that we've had is amazing. Like I would yawn all the time before giving a speech or anything. I would yawn uncontrolled. I would also be very shaky, but I was yawning like nonstop. And I'm like, oh, why am I yawning? Like I'm not tired. I can't stop yawning. And my hands are going crazy. and I'm yawning, and I just wouldn't be able. Like it was like 30 of them before I would say anything, or even if I thought I was gonna speak, the yawning would just come on. Like, and it's just when you
Mm-hmm.
said that, I was like, holy crap, that makes so much sense. I was just
Mm-hmm.
it really.
Yeah. One of the powerful tools to support it moving quicker in those moments, because it's also it's trying, is the breath, is taking deep breaths, and you can imagine just the breath is what is sourcing all of us and expanding and saying like, okay, I can expand to this place. I can hold this experience of getting up on stage right now. And that was the same for me when I started podcasting. Like I said, my first 3 podcasts ever, I was just sitting there and I would shake and I'm like, I'm so glad this isn't on camera, but like I couldn't stop shaking as I was leading it, because it was, again, it's a new experience. So anytime you have a new experience or an experience that you don't have the capacity for, your nervous system is acclimating to it, and that's one of the ways that it's doing that. It's releasing that, like, the sympathetic state, the fight, the flight, the freeze. It's working to downregulate you as you are stepping out beyond your comfort zones into something that feels painful, scary, unknown, sad, all of it. And that's where the resiliency gets built. If you've never allowed yourself to be in a certain emotion, then yeah, the first time it may feel intense or new, or there may be a lot of different releases with it.
I'll tell you, in your journey to normalize trauma, when you were saying like you want that to be a part of culture, that it's more normalized how we understand it and process it and deal with it. I truly believe that what you're talking about should be a part of every single teacher preparation program in every college in the country. I mean, there should be a training camp for the soul part of, for anyone that's working with children should have to go through your course. I totally believe that 100%.
Mm,
And as I work to rework education in the country, you're going to be a part of that. It has to be. It has to be a part of it.
Yes.
It's such a powerful message, and I truly appreciate, and we truly appreciate you coming on our podcast today. This has been such an enlightening hour and a half for us, and I would love to have you back on. We're not. I mean, we're not done with this conversation.
Yeah,
by
I
any
have
means.
so many other. I swear, I have so many thoughts in my head and so many things I could ask you right now. But this was like that was, it like without even knowing us. I feel like you just like unlocked all of these things. My mind is going, and I'm just like relating everything that you're talking about to myself, my past experiences, and I know my brother's doing the same thing. Where it's just like it's all popping up, and it's really like everything you're saying. It just makes me feel comfortable with it, and that's such a such a power that you have. Is like I'm like, oh, I'm not crazy. I don't need to label it or think I'm like bad for
yeah.
thinking or feeling that, and it's just I thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I do believe that's part of normalizing it, is it starts with, all right, you guys don't have to dive in. You can sit in the stage, or not in the stage, in the word for it.
The audience,
Sit on
yeah.
in the audience. Thank you. Sit on the stage. Oh,
Balls.
it's Friday. This is where I'm at. You could sit in the audience, and I think the first part is really a new context, new education, for people to understand what trauma is, how it lives in the body, the ways to release it, like all this stuff. And that's why I give that context on a lot of podcasts. So people are like, it's not that scary. It's just scary because it seems so foreign and so unknown. But yeah. And as you were, Dennis, as you were sharing about teachers and that this should be a part of, their training, and that's part of your mission, I was like, I'm right there with him.
Yeah.
I love this.
Yes.
You and me, brother. Let's
do
go,
it.
brothers.
Let's do this.
Yep.
The Jersey crew.
That's it.
Coming
Why
at
not?
you.
Yeah, come on back to the
Coming
other
in
coast.
hot.
Yeah, that's it. So, and then the other thing
Yeah.
I learned today is that your trauma, we're going to call her Tara from now on. Tara with a capital
Yeah,
T
I know.
is
I
the name
can't
of
wait to
your
approach my trauma as like the capital T Tara is
She
big
was
trauma.
the one who was talking. She wouldn't let you. I
know.
love that. I
Shut
love
up, Tara. God, I'm just gonna.
Aw.
Oh,
Well,
that's
again,
amazing.
and where can you bring Tara some compassion because that's how she survived
Oh, yes.
whatever her experience was. Yeah.
We'll have Tara on the
So,
podcast. She is a fucking hoot.
Yeah,
She's the life of the party in every party she's ever
Yeah,
been to.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
really amazing.
Um,
Now, where can the people from the Building Men podcast, where can our audience find you?
yeah, so I'm on Instagram and I like to get to know my followers. So if you follow me, you're going to get a DM from me because I want to get to know you. I want to know why you're interested in me so that we can best support each other. So Anat Peri at Instagram. And if you're interested in any of my work, trainingcampforthesoul.com.
Anat Peri, thank you so much. Anthony, any final words?
no, I need to reflect on this conversation.
to have a
We
good-
need to have a long
a long
walk,
hug.
and you need to just hug me and inner child Anthony, little Anthony.
Yep, little
I'm
Anthony.
gonna go hug him and just give him the love he needs.
Follow Anat Peri
I
on,
love
on Instagram. Check out Training Camp for the Soul. I need to be a part. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really made a huge impact on my life just in this short conversation. So I truly appreciate it. We'll put all the information in the show notes. If you haven't done so already, consider leaving a review and giving us a rating on wherever you're listening to your podcast. It definitely helps other people find our show. Building Men on Instagram at building.men, buildingmencoach@gmail.com. Go a step further than you thought you could go. Anthony's balls. We'll see you next time on Building Men.